Alright guys, welcome back, and in today's episode we will be covering the Week 11 games, and I'll be giving you my picks for each game. And before we get into the Week 11 games, we do a little Week 10 recap. Week 10, my lock of the week was correct. I picked the Lions over the Commanders, so the pot is still at $100. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure you guys are commenting on each video to give yourself a better chance at winning the giveaway at the end of the year. It's the easiest giveaway you guys can enter. So just make sure you guys are liking and subscribing and comment on each video. And each video you comment on, the better chance you have to win. And the NFL season's moving fast enough, so before you guys know it, the giveaway is going to be ending. And like I said, it's a free $100 right now, and it's only going to go up over the rest of the 6 or 7 weeks. And then some Week 10 recap before we get into our Week 11 games. Our Week 10 player of the week for last week was Jonathan Taylor against the Falcons. Man, that 9:30 game got close. It was a pretty solid game. But Jonathan Taylor finished with 32 carries for 244 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He finished with 3 receptions for 42 receiving yards, and he had the game-winning rushing touchdown versus the Falcons in overtime. I think it's just time for Jonathan Taylor to be in the MVP conversation. You could talk about how good his offensive line is all you want, but if you're talking about value for most valuable player, I think if you take Jonathan Taylor off that team, the offense is nowhere near the same. I think they just rely on him too much. And I think he should for sure be in MVP conversations along with Matthew Stafford and Drake May. But I think that we still got a decent bit left in the season, so anything can happen. Starting for our Week 11 start of the week for our fantasy football fans, we have Trey Tucker versus the Dallas Cowboys. I think Trey Tucker's established himself as the clear wide receiver 1 over there, even before Jacoby Myers left. And I think both defenses are pretty bad in Dallas and Las Vegas. And I could see this being a shootout, or a game where the Cowboys get out to an early lead and Raiders play from behind and just air the ball out. I think that Trey Tucker's going to have a lot of opportunity to get some targets against a weak Dallas secondary. I think him and Brock Bowers are due for big games against a weak Dallas secondary. Like I said, I just think they're in line for a lot of targets in this game. All right, and then moving on to our first game of our Week 11 slate. We have Thursday Night Football. We have the Jets versus the Patriots tomorrow. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup. Can Breece Hall be the first running back to get 50 rushing yards against the Patriots? The Patriots have faced very good running backs. Their tandem of Robert Spillane and Jack Gibbons have been stuffing the run. Their D-line's really solid. Milton Williams was a big pickup in the offseason for them, and they've been able to stuff the run and make teams one-dimensional. I'm interested to see how Justin Fields is going to play after a pretty poor performance. Can he play a complete game and make some big throws when it matters? If they want a recipe to win, he's going to have to make some big throws. I think the Patriots are the clear favorites in this matchup. So it's going to be tough for him, but he's going to have to make some big throws to win it. I'm also interested to see if Travion Henderson's going to have another big game. I saw reports earlier that Mike Vrabel is expecting to give Travion Henderson a big load. I'm excited to see him with the opportunities he's had. He's flashed 5.3 yards per carry. I think he has all the potential to be a good running back, and the more opportunity you give him, the more opportunity he shines. A very big game against the Bucs last week, and I'm excited to see him again this week against the Jets defense. And then can Drake May pick apart the weak Jets secondary without Sauce Gardner now? I saw that Zaire Thomas was ruled out and Garrett Wilson was ruled out as well. I think Drake May is going to pick apart the defense, get out to an early lead, and lean on Travion Henderson to end the game. So for that reason, I'm taking the Patriots in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next on our second game, it's our 9:30 a.m. game. So just make sure you guys are waking up and setting your alarms. I think this is the last overseas game, so unfortunately, no football all day for us. Some things we're looking forward to in this matchup is how Washington's defense is going to look this week. The big news coming out of Washington is that Dan Quinn's taking over the defensive play calling over defensive coordinator Joe Witt. So I'm interested to see how that defense looks. I think it's been pretty lackluster compared to last year. Staying on the Commanders, can Marcus Mariota lead solid offense, and can Washington get the rushing attack back? I think, like I mentioned last week, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, he had very high hope coming into this season. I think he's done pretty good for a 7th-round pick. It's very hard for a 7th-round pick to contribute in this league, but I'm just interested to see. I thought he had a very good start to the season. It's been fizzling out. And part of that could be due to Jaden Daniels not playing. When Jaden Daniels plays, teams have to anticipate a rushing quarterback, and it opens it up for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So I'm just hoping that rushing attack can get it going. And then going over to the Dolphins, can Jalen Waddle take advantage of a weak Washington secondary? I think Jalen Waddle's had a very solid season this year, even with how poor the Dolphins have been playing. Tua Tagovailoa, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. This is likely probably his last season as a Dolphins starting quarterback. I think the Dolphins can go many different options in the offseason with a top pick. But can Jalen Waddle continue to have success against the Washington secondary this week? I think that's the recipe for them to win. And then can Miami carry the momentum after pulling up that big upset against the Buffalo Bills last week? I thought they played really good defense, scored when they had to, and held the time of possession. And I think that's the recipe for them to win. So I'm picking the Dolphins in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next up, our first 1 o'clock game. We have the Carolina Panthers versus the Atlanta Falcons. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup. Can Bryce Young go back to playing like he did after he got benched? I think Bryce Young is just too inconsistent. He has his ups and his downs. He gets injured too often, and you just don't know what you're getting with him per game. Some games they air it out a lot and they trust Bryce Young, but most of these games they just lean on Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard, their backfield, and they try to control time and possession. I just don't think that they believe in Bryce Young right now. As the number one pick in the NFL, he hasn't impressed anyone, but I still have hope in Bryce Young. I think he's had games where he looked like a really good quarterback, but most of these games he's just not performed that well. How often is Atlanta going to blitz Bryce Young? Are they going to make him uncomfortable in the pocket? It seems like Atlanta's a very blitz-heavy team, especially on third down, and I think that's a recipe for disaster for Bryce Young. I think he can get the ball out quick, but I just think he takes too many sacks sometimes, so I'm thinking the Falcons are going to game plan for that one and hopefully give Bryce Young the happy feet in the pocket and make him throw some uncomfortable throws and force him into turnovers. And then staying on the Panthers, I'm wondering if Rico Dowdle's going to continue his success. I don't think anyone before the season started thought that Rico Dowdle would be the leading rusher on this Carolina team. I think everyone thought that Chuba Hubbard would get all the work after getting paid, but Rico Dowdle's impressed. I don't see how you can't bench him, and we showed that Dallas shouldn't have let him go in the offseason. And then going over to the Falcons, can Drake London continue his dominance against one of the best corners in the league, J.C. Horn? I thought he played pretty solid against Christian Gonzalez. But Drake London over the last 4 games has been like unstoppable and unguardable. So I'm interested to see how that 5-star matchup between J.C. Horn and Drake London goes. And I think that's could be a big reason why whatever team wins, whoever wins that matchup could be a big reason why. But Drake London tends to play in the slot and move around a lot, so I don't know if J.C. Horn's going to trail him the whole game. But it's interesting to see that matchup and who wins it. But with taking everything into account, I'm taking the Falcons in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next up we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Buffalo Bills. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup is if Bucky Irving and Chris Godwin are going to play this week. I saw earlier before I filmed this, down here you could see that Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving both had a limited participation in practice today, so that's a good sign and trending towards they could potentially play this week finally. And then staying on the Bucs, can Baker Mayfield lead this Bucs offense back to being a top offense? I get Mayfield as his top target, so it's hard to judge his offense, but it started off so good and fizzled out into a slightly above average offense, so I'm hoping they can get back into their top 3, top 5 offense. You get Baker Mayfield back in MVP conversations. I think he's had a pretty solid season regardless of the couple weeks. And then going over to Buffalo, can Buffalo's passing defense get back on track? And their run defense, matter of fact, as well. I think they just had a very poor performance against the Miami Dolphins, and I think they're going to be looking to prove that they're still a top AFC team. It was embarrassing that they lost to the Dolphins. I think it's like the last 6 matchups the Bills have won, so they got to get in check before the playoffs. And I'm just interested to see if they could forget about last week and come out and try to prove everyone that, like I said, they're a top AFC team. I think the Bills are coming for vengeance. And I'm taking the Bills in this Week 11 matchup. Next up, we have the Chargers versus the Jaguars. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup is can Justin Herbert maintain his injury? He keeps getting hit nonstop with his poor offensive line play. They have all their players injured, all their starters. Their 2 tackles are out, and Slater and Alt. How is that Chargers line going to hold up against Josh Allen and Trevon Walker? I'm interested to see that. And is Justin Herbert going to be able to get the ball out fast like how he did against the Steelers? And even then, I think the Steelers had a pretty good game pressure-wise against Justin Herbert. So, he can only do so much, and he's got to hope the O-line can block for him. Staying on the Chargers, can Kamani Vidal continue his good stretch? I think that he stepped in and been a very good complimentary back with Amari Hampton out, and I think that he's doing himself a favor, and he's definitely going to be playing a role even when Hampton comes back. It was a good pass-catching back. But other than that, I think he's been very good while filling in for the shoes of Amari Hampton while he's injured. So I'm interested to see if he can continue his success. And then going over to Jacksonville, how's it going to look this week? They just announced that Travis Hunter's going to be out for the rest of the year, unfortunately. But how's it going to look with another week of Jacoby Myers? And how involved is he going to be in this matchup? I think that he's one, like I said, I've been on record saying he's one of the most underrated receivers in the league. I think he's a pretty good route runner and can do it all. So I'm interested to see how Trevor Lawrence uses him and how Liam Cohn uses him as well. And then can the Jacksonville secondary limit the Chargers' passing attack of Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston? I think that's one of the best receiver trios in the league. I think they have a lot of depth, and they all fit each other pretty well. Jacksonville's secondaries, on paper, doesn't really impress me. They have a tough task this week, and they have their hands full, but taking everything into account, I'm taking the Chargers in this Week 11 matchup. All right, and next up we have the Chicago Bears versus the Minnesota Vikings. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup are, can the Bears offense have a bounce back week? Even though they won last week against the Giants, they only had 10 points going into the fourth quarter, and the Giants blew another 10-point lead, and that's what led to Brian Dable getting fired. But I just think that their offense didn't have that good of a week, even though they won. I thought the fourth quarter offense looked pretty good. But can have a bounce back week against a tough Minnesota defense that Brian Flores runs, and he can scheme up some good blitzes and make Caleb Williams uncomfortable in the pocket. Can the Bears defense limit Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison? They don't have Jalen Johnson. Jaquan Brisker didn't practice. Kevin Byard didn't practice. They can very well be without some of their top secondary players. So I don't know how they're going to be able to stop both Jefferson and Addison. And is J.J. McCarthy going to be able to get him the ball and get him involved? So I'm interested to see how that goes. And can he play a turnover-free game? I thought he had a couple interceptions last week. So he's got to limit the turnovers and give the Vikings a chance to win. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I'm interested to see how Brian Flores schemes up this game plan against Caleb Williams. I thought he did very good against Jared Goff a couple weeks ago. And I'm sure he's been studying Caleb Williams. They're both in the same division. So I can't wait to see that. But we're taking everything into account. I just trust Brian Flores' defense a little bit more, and I think that they're going to make it uncomfortable for Caleb Williams. So I'm taking the Vikings in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next up, we have the Packers versus the Giants. Man, the Packers are one of the most hard teams to evaluate. Their offense has been horrendous, but their defense is playing like a Super Bowl defense. But going into the game, some things I'm looking forward to is, like I mentioned, is the Packers offense and get back on track. I think they have the recipe, but they just got to put it together. They have Josh Jacobs, Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Luke Musgrave, players that they have a bunch of playmakers. I'm interested to see if this offense can get back in a rhythm. Going over to the Packers defense, how is Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary going to go up against Andrew Thomas? I think Andrew Thomas is one of the premier tackles in the league. So I can't wait to see that. Mentioning going over to the Giants now, I saw Jackson Dart's likely out this week and it's Jameis Winston starting. And we know that Winston likes to air the ball out and he's prone to having a lot of turnovers. But that's what comes with it, with the amount he airs the ball out. But I'm interested to see if that Giants O-line's able to hold up for him against Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Brian Dable got fired, so I'm interested to see how they look under interim head coach Mike Kafka. And then, staying on the Giants, last thing, can the Giants defense limit Josh Jacobs and get after Jordan Love with their elite defensive line? I think that the Giants have one of the better defensive lines in the league with Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. And with Elton Jenkins being out, I saw the report that Elton Jenkins injured his leg last week, so I'm interested to see if the Giants can pick on a injured Packers O-line and get Jordan Love out of the pocket and get him uncomfortable. Taking everything into account, I expect the Packers offense to get it back on track. I think their defense has been playing pretty good, so I'm taking the Packers in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next up we have the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup. I think they just played a couple weeks ago, so I'm interested to see if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins can have another massive game against that Pittsburgh secondary. I think that Pittsburgh secondary is prone to giving a big plays, even though the last 2 to 3 weeks they've been getting better and playing better. And they just signed top cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. out of free agency. He was one of the premier free agents before he had his back injury. But he's going to be on the practice squad. I don't know if he's going to be playing this week, and I don't expect the Steelers to make him fill in the holes with playing against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But I think that Chase and Higgins are in line to have another big game. Joe Flacco gets the ball out pretty well and was giving him a chance to win these games compared to Jake Browning. And then staying on Cincinnati, as their defense can be able to limit Jalen Warren. I think Jalen Warren's one of the most underrated running backs in the league. The Steelers just don't give him the ball enough, and when he gets the ball, he makes plays. You see it. He's a really solid pass catching back, has a pretty good jump cut, a very good runner. Just the offensive line's a little too inconsistent at times for the Steelers, so you don't ever know how involved Jalen Warren's going to be in certain game plans. And then going over to the Steelers, can Aaron Rodgers pick apart the weak Cincinnati secondary? And can DK Metcalf have a breakout game? The Steelers traded a second-round pick and paid DK Metcalf $30 million per year, and only 32 receptions to 8 or 9 games for them. They got to get him involved more. Only 502 yards. He's a premier deep threat. Teams put a safety over him, and they force the other Steelers pass catchers to get open. So I'm interested to see how the Steelers game plan around that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, can Pittsburgh secondary step up for this time around, and can they limit Chase and Higgins, probably the best receiver duo in the league? But we'll take everything into account. I think the Steelers are going to right the wrongs compared to last game, so I'm taking the Steelers in this Week 11 matchup. All right, and then our last 1 o'clock game on the Week 11 games, we have the Texans versus the Titans. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup is if C.J. Stroud's going to play. I pretty sure I saw a report earlier before I filmed this that it looks like Davis Mills is going to be stepping in for another start. And I honestly just like the Texans offense with Davis Mills a little bit more. I think that he tries to involve his top receiver, Nico Collins, and targets him a lot, which he should. I think he's a top 10 receiver. And I think I'm interested to see if the Texans online can continue to play better. I think it's gradually getting better throughout the season. I think it was a dump earlier in the season. I think it's gelling into a decent or playable offensive line. And I don't think that the Texans' defensive line is the best other than Jeffrey Simmons. So I think that if they double team him, they should be able to hold up for Davis Mills. And then going over to the Titans, how will Cam Ward look coming off bye, and can he put together a good second half of the season and give the Titans hope going into next season? I thought he had an up and down rookie season. He doesn't have the best weapons, had his head coach fired, doesn't have the best offensive line. So I think they tried to set him up for success, but it didn't really work. And then I'm just interested to see which receiver is going to step up in this game. Is it going to be Alec Ayamanor, Calvin Ridley, who they paid a lot of money to? Chamari DK, is he going to be the one that steps up? I think that he's had a bigger role ever since Ryan Callahan's been fired. I think the new interim head coach likes him a lot. But taking everything into account, I'm taking the Texans in this Week 11 matchup. All right, and then on our 4 o'clock games, our first 4 o'clock game, we have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Arizona Cardinals. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup is Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall finally going to play. I feel like I mention this every single video every week. However, I did see a report before filming this that I think Purdy's going to take over for Jones and get his first start in a while after being injured. I'm excited to see how the offense looks with Kittle healthy, hopefully Pearsall playing, and Purdy finally coming back. And then staying on the Niners, going over to the defense, can anyone in that defense get some pressure? I just feel like last game they got no pressure. And then I just want to mention Mac Jones, although he's most likely not going to play the rest of the season if Purdy comes back. I think that he showed himself he's still a pretty young quarterback. He could be a player that a team offers a good contract to in the offseason. He gets a chance to start while a team is looking for a quarterback, and maybe Mac Jones can be that. And then going over to the Cardinals, can Jacoby Brissett continue to involve Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr.? Although I did see that Marvin Harrison's not going to play this week. I think he had surgery. I don't want to misspeak, but I know he had surgery and he's not playing this week. But I think Jacoby Brissett's played pretty solid when stepping in over Kyler Murray. And that's why I think that they were fine putting Kyler Murray on the IR. But I like how he involves his playmakers. And then how's Arizona going to limit CMC this week? I always mention it every single week. He leads the team in rushing and receiving. Has had a pretty solid year. I'm interested to see how they can limit him. I think if you can limit him, they're due for success. But with taking everything into account, I'm taking the Niners in this Week 11 matchup. All right, and next up we have the Seattle Seahawks versus the LA Rams. I can't wait for this matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to be the top receiver this week between JSN and Puka Nacua. I think they're playing like the 2 top receivers in the league this year. Although Puka has been injured, still has 775 receiving yards. JSN has over 1,000 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. And they both have played like the best receivers in the league, so I'm interested to see who comes out on top of this matchup, and I think whoever has a bigger game will help their team win. I'm also interested to see the battle between both quarterbacks. I think both quarterbacks have been playing at an MVP level more recently. Darnold has 2,200 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Matthew Stafford turning back the clock. I always thought he's been a very good quarterback, almost 2,500 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think that both offenses over the last couple of weeks have been shown like they're one of the top offenses in the league, so this could be a game where it's a potential shootout. Very good game this week. I think this could be underrated game of the week. And then I think this game is just going to be decided on whoever's defense plays better and gets more stops. I think this would be a very close matchup, but I'm just going to trust the Seahawks defense a little bit more, and I'm taking the Seahawks in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next up we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup is how the Browns are going to be able to try to limit Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry's had a pretty solid season, 704 rushing yards, in line for another 1,000-yard rushing season. I think Derrick Henry's had to play some tough rushing defenses, especially last week against Minnesota's rushing defense. And then going over to the Browns, can the Browns offense look average for once? And it's only a matter of time before they turn over to Shadur Sanders. I think Dylan Gabriel has been solid, but I just don't think he's the future of this team. And then going over to Baltimore, I just feel like they're a little inconsistent even when Lamar Jackson came back. I think that there's certain periods in games where they just don't look like a top team. So I'm interested to see if they can play a complete game against this Browns defense. Although the Browns team isn't good, their defense is one of the better defenses in the league. And then can Baltimore's offense just make it a rough night for Dylan Gabriel and get back into one of the better defenses in the league? And I think that they're trying into the right direction. I think their offense is getting better and their defense is getting better, and that's what you want to do at this time of the year. But I'm interested to see how they go about game planning against Dylan Gabriel and trying to shut down Quinshon Judkins. But I just can't wait, and I'm hoping This is going to be a good game, but with taking everything into account, I'm taking the Ravens in this Week 11 matchup. All right, next up we have the Chiefs versus the Broncos. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup is how is Patrick Mahomes going to play against an elite Denver defense, one of the better defenses in the league. I get Pat Surtain's out, their top premier lockdown corner. So I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to pick apart that defense, and how is he going to, him and Rashee Rice going to get in rhythm in this game. I think it's one of the better quarterback wide receiver duos in the league. And I'm just not the fondest of the Broncos. I'm not the biggest believer in them. I think they're a little bit overrated at 8-2. And I think they're due for regression. I just think their offense is terrible. I think their defense is carrying them. And you get wins how you get wins, so I can't fault them for that. But I just not the highest on them. I can very well see them winning the division and the Chiefs beating them in the playoffs. But going over to the Broncos, can the Broncos make it a one-dimensional game for the Chiefs and stuff their rushing attack? I think the Broncos have one of the better rushing defenses in the league. And the Chiefs don't have a premier running back at this time with Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt running the ball. I saw they had the rumor they were trying to trade for Breece Hall at the trade deadline. I think they're self-aware that they need a better running back. But I think this is going to be a tough game for them, where the Broncos are making them one-dimensional and have Mahomes throw the ball a lot this game. And then, like I mentioned earlier, can the Broncos offense get back to being a solid offense? Just an average offense. And if they can get into a league average offense, I think they could be unstoppable. I just think Bo Nix, not a sophomore slump, but he just hasn't looked the best. Hasn't been able to get Courtland Sutton involved a lot the past couple of weeks. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But with taking everything into account, I just trust Mahomes more. I think he has a tough matchup this week, but I'm taking the Chiefs in this Week 11 matchup. All right, and then our Sunday Night Football matchup, we have the Detroit Lions versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup. Can the Detroit defense stuff Saquon and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball to win the game? I don't mean to hate on Jalen Hurts, but I think that's the recipe to success for teams to make the Eagles lose, is make Jalen Hurts throw the ball and put the game into Jalen Hurts' hands to win the game. I'm curious to see if the Lions defense can be able to limit Saquon. And then I'm interested to see in this 5-star matchup, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Quinyon Mitchell. I can't wait to see that one. I think it's one of the best receivers in the league versus one of the better corners in the league. I think whoever wins that matchup is going to be a big reason why their team wins. And then can Jahmyr Gibbs have another big week against a tough Philly run defense? I think he had a very good week last week against the Commanders. He's got a tougher matchup this week against the Philly D-line. And then I'm interested to see for this Eagles team, is it going to be a Devontae Smith week or an A.J. Brown week? It looks like Devontae Smith is taking over more as a receiver one as the season goes on. A.J. Brown doesn't seem too happy with the team, and I can very well see him being traded in the offseason. Staying on this game, taking everything into account, I'm taking the Lions in this Week 11 Sunday Night Football matchup. All right, and then our last matchup on Monday Night Football is my lock of the week. Some things I'm looking forward to in this matchup, though, before I get my pick. Is Dak Prescott going to be able to pick apart this week's Las Vegas secondary? I don't think they have any premier corners that are going to be able to shut down Pickens and Lamb. Like I mentioned, can Pickens and Lamb themselves have a big week against a favorable matchup? And then going over to the Raiders, can Ashton Genty have a good week against a favorable matchup as well? I don't think that this Dallas run defense has been pretty good. They just traded for Quinnen Williams, Logan Wilson, so I'm interested to see how this new look Dallas defense looks. I think Jerry Jones made some big moves at the deadline, so I can't wait to see how that looks. Is the defense going to look better, or is it just how it's always been? And then lastly, who in this Las Vegas receiver room is going to step up and fill the hole for Jacoby Myers? I mentioned earlier that Trey Tucker, I think, is going to have a big game. But I'm hoping they involve the rookies Jack Besh and Dante Thornton more. But with taking everything into account, my Week 11 lock of the week, I'm taking the Cowboys over the Raiders in this matchup. Alright guys, and that marks the end of my Week 11 game predictions. I appreciate you guys staying tuned to the end of the video. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to give yourself a chance for the giveaway. It's up to $100 right now, and it's going up over time. Make sure you guys are commenting on each video. Just let me know if you guys agree with my picks, disagree, what you want your team to do, how you're feeling about your team, anything about your team. I'll reply to you guys in the comments. Like I said, just please follow all the steps. It's the easiest giveaway you guys can enter. But like I said, I appreciate your guys' support. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next week for my Week 12 game predictions.